So as we know, the state of modern dating is not the best right now. Women seem to be really resentful of men, and men seem to be really resentful of women. And today I want to be talking about how modern feminism and social media have ruined women. And no worries, because I'm also planning to make a part 2 where I'll be talking how feminism as well and porn, which would be kind of the equivalent of social media for men, have ruined modern men. But focusing on women today, I want to start off by saying that most of us are feminists. I mean, I don't know a single person who does not believe that women shouldn't have equal opportunities, equal rights, the right to vote. I'm sure there are some out there because that's the world that we're in. You know, there are people who have all sorts of crazy beliefs, but for the vast majority of us, I think it's fair to say that we don't fall in that category. So by the traditional definition of feminism, most of us, the vast majority of us, would be considered feminist. However, modern feminism has really taken a shift. It's not what it once was. It's very different nowadays. It represents different things. It sends women in a very different direction. And because of that, I don't really consider myself a feminist anymore, if only because the association is with that wave of feminism. And I think that's true for most of us as well, at least for most men I've met. However, I think it's totally safe to say that back in the day, once upon a time, feminism was quite necessary. You know, women didn't have the same equal opportunities, equal rights. That was for a reason. It wasn't because there was this patriarchal system that was out there to oppress us, like modern feminists believe. And in fact, if that had been the case, given that we as women are way physically weaker than men, they would have never liberated us. If we were really, you know, enslaved to them and not seen as another human being, then why would they have liberated us in that way? They could have just easily been like, you're never gonna vote, you're never gonna have, you know, equal rights, equal opportunity, or own property. And that was not the case, which makes me think that unless the people in the patriarchy completely changed and all of a sudden they're kind and they don't want to oppress women anymore, most likely there was never any patriarchy to begin with. Now, was there ever a system where people at the top were in control and the other ones not so much? Sure, and that system's still in place today and probably be till the end of times. But that doesn't mean that it was men at the top. It was rather wealthy men who were in control. So when we start having the feminist movement, which was pretty much needed at the time, over time we also see that now it's 2 people in the workforce. So it's going to be 2 people tax, which of course is of great interest to the government, you know, because now you have double the taxes, and you also have children who, instead of being at home and being indoctrinated by their parents with their own particular values, now the government is taking care of that. And now they're going to have all these population of children who are going to think whatever way they want them to think. But those are like bigger, not even so relevant topics at the moment. Just wanted to do some context in there. By the way, if you're liking this video, if you're liking my content, please support my channel by subscribing, giving me your likes and your comments. So what makes feminism then take women in this route, what they have become completely undateable for the most part, and also just not even want to be with men in the first place? First, we know that women were traditionally dependent financially on men. Men were their sole providers typically, and women had to work, had their own roles, but in a very different way. It was mostly inside the home with the children, etc. And of course, all of this had a whole evolutionary reason to it. It didn't just happen like feminists believe, you know, the patriarchy came and was like, you're gonna stay home as we were. It was never like that. Of course, if you are physically inferior, you're going to need people who are physically superior to take care of you. The same way that if we have children as women, we're not gonna send our kids out there to protect us. We're gonna protect them when we're out there with them. So that was part of it. And also the reason that, of course, if a woman was pregnant, she couldn't go out there to hunt or to seek for food. So it made a lot more sense that the physically stronger, more resistant gender also would not be disabled when he got pregnant, because he doesn't get pregnant to begin with. It just made a lot more sense that he would be out there hunting, providing, protecting, whereas the woman would have her own roles, her own jobs, but inside the home. But with feminism, it empowers women to go down this route of having their own jobs. And for some reason, when women start making money, many of them start believing that they don't need men to begin with. And this takes place because many women were in marriages where they were just there for the financial provision, which makes sense because before, nowadays, marriage was not really seen as this thing that was based on love, on connection, on companionship. Rather, it was something that was based on a more mutual business contract type thing. You know, like, we're gonna get together. You bring your resources from your family. I bring my resources from my family. We have a family, we progress, we move forward. And that's kind of the end of it. Nowadays, of course, we know it's more based on love and passion or lack of it for some people, these kind of things, which are very, very different to what marriage once was. But of course, now you start having women that start working and they're like, oh, but I was married, or I was thinking of men because I needed them to provide for me, and I don't need that anymore because now I provide for myself. Which means, I guess, that I don't actually need men. And you start having many women come to this realization. And many of these women start prioritizing then, you know, physical looks or affection or love in their relationships, and not so much other things, or they just downright become enthralled with this idea that they don't need men at all. And when you have feminism that's starting to become into this toxic propaganda that, yeah, women actually, not only do we not need men, but we're better off without them. I mean, we've all seen these interviews of guys in the streets interviewing girls, and they ask them if they need men, and it's ridiculous how many of them say that they don't need them at all, and that in fact they're better off without them. And this is absurd, because of course we need men. Of course, I mean, everything you see in this room right now has been built by a man. This does not mean that men don't need us, because of course they do. I think we all need each other. It's such a basic thing. We're extremely interdependent. That's what a society is to begin with. And I completely empathize with guys when they're completely and I totally empathize with guys when they're repulsed by women who say that they don't need men, because I get in their shoes and I'm like, if I had a man being like, oh, I don't need you, and having this sort of attitude, I'd also be like, I don't want to see you ever in my life. And forget about relationships. If I had a friend come up to me and be like, oh, well, I don't need friends, I'd be like, what's the point of me being here then? Like, why am I needed? And as a result, many men have started to feel that way. They're like, okay, like, why am I needed then? Because society is telling me that I'm just a rapist, that I'm not even good, like I'm not needed. And these women are telling me that as well. And they're acting like they don't need me to begin with. It's not just their words, that they're acting like it. And as a result, they themselves start becoming more feminized. And, you know, we have this polarity just not even existing. That's more for the men's video. And when you have more women in the workforce, and with this idea that, you know, it's completely oppressive to even be at home and raise children, then you also have many women shying away completely from the motherhood process. And this makes them repulsive to some men, because many men want to have a family and they do want to have a mother figure at home. They want the wife to take care of the kids. We add to this the rise of birth control, of abortion, and many women do not even feel the consequences of a potential pregnancy. You know, back in the day, women feared pregnancy with random men because they needed those men for their financial security if they were to have kids. And nowadays it's like, oh, well, I work for myself, one, and two, maybe I won't even get pregnant. In fact, I probably won't get pregnant if I have sexual relationships with all of these guys, so who cares anyway? Completely ignoring the fact that as women, we are built in a completely different way, mentally, physically, emotionally, and that casual sex most of the time is going to end up having very extreme repercussions on us, which in turn also make us even more repulsive to those guys who would take us seriously to begin with. Then you also have feminism for some strange reason. I don't know if that's a greater conspiracy or what, but pushing women to become, instead of their own best feminine versions, to become more so like men. It's weird because on one side it hates men, you know, it makes women hate them and see them as the enemy, and the other side it makes women become more like them. And this of course ends up in women not being attractive to men, but also not wanting them and resenting them, because they're becoming something that's completely against their nature, and they're unhealthy, they're unhappy, they start to become very anti-aesthetic, doing things that are not attractive to anyone, not even men, to anybody. And when people react rightfully so to that, they complain that they're misogynistic or backwards or whatever it is. Feminism also starts pushing the idea that women and men are alike, and that's why we see more promiscuity and women thinking there's absolutely nothing wrong with them being promiscuous. There's gonna be no consequences. And remember those gender roles that we talked about that were put in place by an evolutionary perspective? We start rejecting those too, because we're like, we're the same, so who cares? Maybe me as a woman, I can be the protector and the leader and the provider, and he can stay home and raise the kids. And of course that hardly ever works. Sometimes it does. You know, everybody's different. I'm sure there's some couple that's out there who it does work for, but most people, it just doesn't really seem to work in the same way. So you basically end up having very confused, hurt, masculinized, hardened women who have become not only the antitheses of what men would want in a long-term partner to begin with, but have also become hardened to such an extent that they are not even happy with themselves. They're suffering, their health often suffers. And on top of that, add the fact that they see men as the enemy, because they see them as part of this patriarchy that's trying to oppress them and hurt them. So of course they're like, let me shy away with that. And when we add to that all the promiscuity and all the traumas that can rise from that, it's just a whole hot mess. Because now they have real reason, you know, extremely promiscuous women, now they have real reasons to resent men because they have had men use them, and of course they have responsibility in that, but you know, they've allowed men to actively use them, and now they effectively resent these men, which is completely understandable. But they avoid all sort of responsibility on that because they've been lied to. They're like, no, you're the same as a man. So they're lost. They're like, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel used? And they use all that resentment into hating them and seeing them as the enemy without taking any sort of responsibility or thinking that perhaps they were lied to, which I understand. You know, if you've been lied to forever by the media, by social media, by the people in your life, by the government, even by school, by education, by your job, it's completely understandable to not realize that. And we add to this hot mess, as if we already didn't have enough, the second part, which is social media. And of course, social media is a much more modern development. You know, when I was talking about feminism, I was trying to be sort of chronological, and that takes us back way farther back than social media. But social media starts making things even worse because now women, not only do they become obsessed with validation, they also almost become dependent on this external validation that they can get from social media. We start seeing more and more women who have no skills and no talent capitalize of their sexiness. And sure, models, actresses, misses, you know, beauty queens have always been a thing, but those women were classy, they were modeling a certain thing, or they were representing a certain thing. They weren't just living off objectifying themselves. And in fact, up until now, it had always been viewed very poorly to do this kind of job, to objectify yourself and make money, or to downright prostitute yourself. But we start seeing the rise of all these IG girls or OF girls, and we start to call this empowerment. I don't know to whom this is empowering to begin with, because clearly not the women. They think they're empowering themselves, but really they're teaching themselves, whether subconsciously or consciously, most of the time subconsciously, that they're only good for one thing. They're only worth their body. There's nothing else that they can offer to the world. There's nothing else that they can use to make money. There's nothing else that they can offer to men than just their body, which is extremely toxic, not only because you're seeing yourself as pretty much worthless and completely dependent on male validation, but also because you're in a race that you can never win, because there's always going to be a more beautiful girl, a younger girl. There's always going to be newer, more entertaining, more attractive people who are willing to do things that you're probably not. Lily Phillips and Bonnie Blue, for instance, you know, many of girls, they just wanted to take their clothes off and make money, and now they're like, I have to compete with that. So women start becoming addicted to this validation because we start having an army of sims, and that will be more so in the men's video. And they start feeling extremely well when they get all these dopamine hits from the likes, from the comments, from the subscribers to the OFs. They start feeling on top of the world, start feeling seen, worthy, whatever it is that these dopamine hits make women feel. They also start seeing how other people on social media are living their lives and how all these women have these men who are giving them this gifts, and they think that they too deserve that. I mean, after all, they're getting all these likes from all these sims without realizing, one, that many of these women have had to do many crazy things to get to that point where they're receiving all these things. Two, that maybe they just had downright luck. Or three, that maybe they're just not really in the same league. But because they have all these sims convincing them that they're a 10, they also start thinking that they are. And this combined with the fact that they're being promiscuous and they are sleeping with these kind of guys, probably not getting commitment, but sleeping with these guys, in turn makes them convinced that they too deserve that kind of guy and they won't settle for less, which more often than not leaves them a life of bitterness, solitude, feeling lost and confused, and being more and more used with guys, or just downright sharing a top guy in order to feel like she can show that lifestyle off on social media, even at her detriment of behind the camera and behind the photos not having the kind of life that would make her happy with someone who values her and cares for her. So this, like everything else, becomes this crazy toxic cycle and starts sending other women as well, younger women especially, the message that this is all they're good for, this is all that matters, and look how happy she is, and look how many places she's going to, and look how many likes she has, and how much male attention she has. And this starts becoming the priority for absolutely every girl out there, or so it seems. And with the army of sims and with all the corn addicted men, they also validate these women even more and kind of ignore the ones that perhaps are more homely, or perhaps are not so focused on showcasing their physical appearance, but could have a lot to bring to the table in a relationship. So when you have this addiction to male validation, when you feel like it's okay to live off your body or even to show it off for free online, when you feel like it's okay, in fact good, to be promiscuous and have lots of casual no strings attached sex. On top of that, you're sharing these top men because you think that they can commit to you, or because you think that it's more important because of the lifestyle that they can provide than having a good guy who might actually care about you. On top of that, you're on birth control, you know, having all these affairs without ever becoming pregnant, which would maybe stop you from having these affairs to begin with, or if you do get pregnant, doing what many women do, interrupting that pregnancy. And you also have a system that's telling you that you're a poor, oppressed victim, that it's empowering, in fact, to live of your body, that you're probably not even worth anything else. You have the media telling you that, your friends are involved in a similar pattern of thinking. Maybe even your mother is raising you in a similar way. Maybe at this point you've been with enough men, you've let yourself been used by enough men that you yourself have become resentful of them with good reason at this point, to think it's empowering to downright reject men and to become a version of a woman that is repulsive to them, or to think that you don't need them and that it's just better off to be completely by yourself. You know, you have this combination of factors, and for some women it might be some more the sexualization part, for others it might be more the independence part, for others it might be both, for others it might be neither, and those are like the rare exception that men do still want to marry. When you have this crazy combination, you end up having a melting pot that ends up being a hot mess, and most women just end up becoming completely undateable, at least for serious things, completely unmarriageable, and just sad, lonely, confused, bitter. That's what I see most, and very resentful of the opposite sex without ever taking into account, one, their own personal responsibility, and two, that they have been lied to. They have been played, and massively so. So yeah, guys, that's why I think that feminism and social media, in very, very brief, summarized term, have ruined modern women. Of course, there is hope to that. I think more and more people are opening their eyes. I mean, back in the day, saying things like these were so controversial, and yet nowadays so many people are starting to see things for what they are, that it's almost normalized to have these sorts of conversations, and I have lots of hope. And more women are opening their eyes and seeing that they have value way beyond their looks, and objectifying themselves is far from empowering, and they do need a man and all these things, and the gender roles might be in fact important to their relationship, and those women end up being the ones that men do take seriously and do have families with. The same way that many women are lost and probably unsalvageable at this point, we can say the same for men. We'll see that in the part 2 of this video, which will be why feminism and porn, which is like the equivalent of social media for men regarding the dopamine, has completely ruined modern men. And only that percentage that can rise from that will be the percentage that ends up with the percentage of women who rose from all of this that we just mentioned. If there are any things missing from this list, I would love to see them in the comment section. I would love to hear your opinions regarding this. If you agree, if you disagree, it's a safe space. Give me your likes, subscribe, give me your comments, and I will see you very soon.